When I open a religious education class, I usually start with a chalice lighting, just like you do in the service. Ours goes like this. We are Unitarian Universalists. See the U's? See the chalice? See the flame? We are Unitarian Universalists. We are the church of the open mind. We are the church of the helping hands. And we are the church of the loving heart.
My favorite song from church is We Are Building a New Way. And this little light of mine.
When I arrived at UUCT, goodness, 3.5 years ago, Pat Clements and Karen Tinbarge and Karen Cronice were in the process of starting a daytime women's group, which evolved into Sun Circle. And out of Sun Circle grew a yoga class and a book discussion group.
A couple of years ago, we started with a book called Heart to Heart.
Although we all knew each other before this happened, this has been a wonderful way to connect on a different level and get to know each other in a deeper way.
Yes, I really have known most of them. I know them pretty well, but I'm feeling like this group is really getting us to know each other more deeply. You know, one of the great things about it is we've had about 8 people for each of the 3 books, but it hasn't been all the same people. The topics are things that you just don't talk about every day after church at coffee hour or, at the Zoom happy hour. To me, it's been a really important part of my spiritual journey to be able to talk about those things with people who I know are listening and are concerned and caring.
What I like about being a Unitarian Universalist is lighting the candles at the lighting candles time. Like where everyone stands up in a line to light up candles. Like everyone who's in the line can light up candles. The reason I like that is because we get to share some things about ourselves.
Look, religious education is an explicit space on our properties, in our Zoomiverse, and it provides for our kids and really for all of us to get acquainted with the foundations and the current events that inform our liberal religion, so that when our ministers and other prophetic voices of our denomination guide us to meaning, to find meaning in our world and our work and our outreach, we're equipped with tools to pull from, and our children are familiar with what leads us to do what we do. This is why I do what I do. This is why you want UUTuscaloosa to thrive.
1.
Each person is worthwhile.
2.
Be kind in all you do.
3.
We help each other learn
4.
and search for what is true.
5.
Each person gets a vote,
6.
but a just and peaceful world.
7.
We take care of the earth, and that brings us back to me and you too.
Welcome. I'm Reverend Erica Hewitt, the Minister of Worship Arts at the Unitarian Universalist Association. I live on the ancestral lands of the Abenaki people on the coast of Maine, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
I'm Reverend Vale Weller, Congregational Giving Director at the UUA. I live on the ancestral land of the Ohlone people in San Mateo, California, and I use she, her, her pronouns. This worship service is an offering from your UUA, Worship Web, our Stewardship and Development Department, and your UUA president. It's an expression of our covenant to and with each other.
You are part of us and we are part of you. In our joyful process of collaboration with the stellar religious professionals you're about to meet, we centered our care for you, the congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association.
Even in these times when we are with one another virtually, let us remember that we belong to one another.
We are loved into being.
These are times of isolation and loneliness. Our hearts long for connection and for one another.
Illness has visited our lives. Struggle and pain are in our communities. Our children's lives have been disrupted. There has been such great loss.
And yet we are surrounded by beauty, by grace, and by music that blesses us.
All the while, we are surrounded by love. We are loved into courage.
We are loved into community. We are loved into generosity. We are loved into being. We are loved into being.
Come, let us open our hearts and grow the size of our souls. Come, let us worship together. I'm joining you here from First Parish in Cambridge, and I want to thank the First Parish community and Reverend Adam Lawrence Dyer for offering their space to us. First Parish sits on the occupied land of the Massachusetts people. A community of the Massachusetts people still live in Massachusetts in the community of Canton. I have a story for you today. And there's two things that are important about this story. Number one, it's a true story. And number two, it's an anonymous story. So I read this story many years ago in Yes magazine, and the author of the story was listed only as Jane B. I love this story because it speaks to the fact that even in incredibly difficult circumstances, that the presence of love, that acts of generosity and hospitality really are life-saving. Here's Jane's story. Jane and her brother grew up in the 1940s in Hollywood, California, a town known for show business. Now, Jane says that she and her brother were adopted by their parents, not because their parents loved children, but because their parents thought it completed the image of the perfect Hollywood family. A beautiful home in Beverly Hills, a fleet of servants, 2 adorable children, and a little spaniel dog. Jane and her brother hardly ever saw their parents. They were largely raised by the housekeepers and nannies. It was only on Sunday when the whole family went to the country club. There, Jane and her brother were expected to be perfectly well behaved, not to run around or get dirty, to know which piece of silverware to use at every course, to be seen but not heard. They were taught to speak only when spoken to. Looking back, Jane said of herself, "I wasn't a real girl. I was a cardboard cutout of a girl." Jane's best memories from her childhood were when she was with her grandmother. And one day, her grandmother took her to a rummage sale in a church basement. Now, this was Hollywood, California. So this rummage sale was filled with costumes and fancy clothes that were from the movies or from movie stars. Jane's grandmother gave her $2, which was a lot of money at that time, and said, "Buy whatever you want." Well, Jane went home with 2 armfuls of things, and as soon as she got home, she ran straight up to her room with all of that loot, and she started trying things on. Finally, she settled on a little pink night dress, a big broad hat, white satin gloves, and every piece of costume jewelry that she bought. She looked at herself in the mirror, and Jane was awestruck. She looked like a different person. She decided to give herself a new name, Madame Modifus. Now, whereas Jane was quiet, Madame Modifus was bold. And whereas Jane was shy, Madame Modifus was flamboyant. And whereas Jane always did exactly as she was told, well, Madame Modipus, she had a mind of her own. Jane, all dressed up, ran down the stairs across the yard to the house next door and knocked on the door. When the mother next door and her little son opened the door, their jaws fell open. Jane said, "My name is Madame Modifus. May I come in for tea?" Well, the mother and her son, they welcomed Jane into their home. They played for hours, and then Jane went back to her house. Now, any time that Jane had a little bit of time to herself, she would get all dressed up and she would run to the neighbor's house, and they just came to call her Madame Modifus. Jane ends her story by sharing how she now is a grandmother, and that one of her favorite things to do is to visit her own grandchildren, and that whenever she goes to see them, they wait for her outside on the yard, and when she pulls into the driveway, they jump up and down and scream her name, Maudie, 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 the only name they've ever known her by.
There are days that I won't I'm alright. And I'll pretend with a smile I face. And I can keep pain from running out my eyes. Sometimes I cry. Sometimes I cry.
Dear ones, we will now enter a time of libations, lamentation, and prayer. The pouring of libations is a centuries old ritual performed by many cultures. At the core of this sacred ritual is the calling forth of personal and collective ancestors across the millennium and across all space. Libations are poured to honor life, all life. Before we begin, it is just and holy that we honor the original lands of the indigenous community or communities where we live. As I am here at Community Church of New York in New York City, specifically Midtown Manhattan, I must honor that these lands are of the Lenape peoples. The Lenape offspring of the Algonquin civilization and includes present-day New Jersey, New York, and Delaware. If you know them, please call to mind the indigenous peoples where you reside, honoring that these lands are not ours, and we must always honor this truth. I will now call upon the ancestors from all directions as I remain before you, even virtually. I invite you to respond Ashe as each direction is honored. The pouring of libations. To the east, lands of the rising sun, elements of air with the color yellow, ancestors of the East, be with us now. Ashe. To the South, welcoming the ancestors of African ancestry, the element is fire and the color is red. Be with us now. Ashe. To the West, lands of the setting sun, the element of water with the color of blue, the emotional realm, ancestors of the West, be with us now. Ashe. To the North, the elements of earth with the color of green, the direction of sustenance and grounding. Ancestors of the North, be with us now. Ashe. Lastly, I pour libations to the heavens, the plants, the seas, the animals, and all winged creatures. Be with us now. Ashe. Our time of lament. Friends, both near and far, we have been and are in some of the most difficult times the world has experienced in over 100 years. COVID-19 continues to unleash havoc on this country and the world, with over 500,000 people dying here in the United States, the most the world over, even as over 1 million vaccines are being given daily. The level of grief so many are experiencing with isolation, feeling like incarceration, full-time parenting, providing online, full-time educational learning for children is much too much. That is, if you can afford to be at home at all. Some of our workloads have produced a level of fatigue, particularly for some mothers and other caregivers, creating levels of despair, which is leading to depression. We indeed must lament. We must grieve how difficult this is and continues to be for so many. At once, it's also true that we recently heard the life expectancy for everyone has decreased during the pandemic. For African Americans, social scientists have stated the life expectancy during the pandemic is decreased by 3 years. 2 years for our Latinx communities and 1 year for those who are white. We also know as a country, the vaccines are being distributed in inequitable ways, and the world over, 75% of the vaccines are going to more wealthy countries, not where they are needed most. We must lament. Yes, give yourself time to lament, to grieve, to shout, scream, cry, and sometimes it feels laughable how it's going on. And we can continue to find beauty. Let us continue to reach out to others in even more innovative ways. Lean on and nurture your Unitarian Universalist faith and share what you are feeling. Let us also create. Let's create music, art, joy, and safe human touch where possible. Amen. I couldn't hear y'all. Amen. I would now like to invite us into a moment of prayer as we prepare our hearts and minds for today's loved into being service. Please take a few moments to locate your breath in your body. Take this moment to breathe deeply. Just notice where your breath is in your body without judgment. A moment of prayer. Spirit of life, love, nameless one, God. We gather in times of great peril for so many. Our social and political systems are in great upheaval, even as we are rising up to end all systemic oppressions. Yet, the COVID-19 virus continues to mutate even as the vaccines are being given. 10 million people have lost their jobs, with many of them, mostly Black and brown people, will never return to those very jobs. It's also true that millions in Texas and other parts of the globe are experiencing impacts of climate change, which will forever change their lives. Great Spirit, be with us now and them always. As we prepare our hearts and minds for the word today, please give us the courage to know that Unitarian Universalism can and does transform lives, and we have sacred, holy work to do to decenter whiteness within ourselves, each congregation, and our communities. Our communities and the world need our highest aspirations and ideals as a living faith tradition to rise up in all of us as we continue to love ourselves and each other into holy being. This is ongoing, demanding, sacred, yes, sacred work. And I believe we collectively can do it. Do you? Amen. Ashe. Blessed be. Shalom. Salam. And may it be so.
I would like to begin by acknowledging that I live in the traditional land of the people of the Three Fires. I am deeply honored and grateful to the land itself and to the people who have taken care of it for generations. And today I bring to you a quote from the process theologian Bernard Loomer, who says, by size, I mean the stature of a person's soul. I mean the range and depth of your love, your capacity for relationships. I mean the volume of life you can take into your own being and still maintain your integrity and individuality. The intensity and variety of outlook you can entertain in the unity of your being without feeling defensive or insecure. I mean the strength of your spirit to encourage others to become freer in the development of their diversity and their uniqueness. I mean the power to sustain more complex and enriching tensions. I mean the magnanimity of concern to provide conditions that enable others to increase in stature. End of quote. Of the hundreds of books I had to read for seminary, of the thousands of passages that I read and highlighted and marked, this one has stayed with me the most. From the moment I read that quote, I was like, that is it. That is it. Because since I came from Cuba in 1995, I have been in many liberal religious circles, and we had been having in those circles this amazing conversation about what was out there, amazing conversations about the meaning of life, but no one was talking about what goes on in here. At the core of our being, no one was talking about our humanity and the struggles that come with being human, as well as the delights. This quote was talking about these tensions inside of us, the expansion, the volume, the range, the depth, the complexities of our humanity. Shall I read that quote again? Let's read it again. Here it is. By size, I mean the stature of a person's soul, the range and depth of your love, your capacity for relationships. I mean the volume of life you can take into your own being and still maintain your integrity and individuality. The intensity and variety of outlook you can entertain in the unity of your own being without feeling defensive or insecure. I mean the strength of your spirit to encourage others to become freer in the development of their diversity and their uniqueness. I mean the power to sustain more complex and enriching tensions. I mean the magnanimity of concern to provide conditions that enable others to increase in stature. Here's another reason why I love that quote so much, why it resonated with me so much. It's particularly this line, I mean the strength of your spirit to encourage others to become freer in the development of their diversity and uniqueness. I was like, what if that is the future of liberal religion? What if this is where we have failed by not encouraging others to become freer in the development of their own diversity and their uniqueness? The story of Madame Modifus is a story that is painfully familiar to me. Someone who came from another country, from another culture, and having to tone it down in order to fit in, because my whole self is not welcomed in some places. And what I know about the human soul is that it goes into hiding. It goes into hiding when we can be our full selves, our whole self. And that breaks my heart every single day, seeing what oppression and repression does to the human soul, to our core, to what is most authentic, most unique, most precious about us. What having to repress our life force does to our psyches. I know. And so this quote is asking us to grow the size of our soul, to expand, to open up and let in more perspectives and more languages, and more cultures and more colors, more diverse wisdom, and to wrestle, to wrestle with how that contradicts our own worldview. It is asking us not just to allow others their uniqueness, but to invest in the growth of others. That's my second favorite line. I mean the magnanimity of concern to provide conditions that enable others to increase in stature. And that is love, beloveds. That is love. That is love. That investment in creating the right conditions for all of us to grow and flourish. And you know what Zora Neale Hurston said about that, right? She said, love, make your soul crawl out from its hiding place. Love, make your soul crawl out from its hiding place. May we create more loving conditions. May we invest in love. May it be so. May it be so. Amen and ashe.
Then a rainstorm came over me, and I felt my spirit break. I had lost all of my belief, you see. I realized my mistake, but time threw a prayer to me, and all around me became still. I need love, love divine. Please forgive me now. I see that I've been blind. Give me love. Love is what I need to help me know my name. In the rainstorm came sanctuary. And I felt my spirit fly. I have found all of my reality. I realize what it takes. Give me love. Love divine, please forgive me now. I see that I've been blind. Give me love. Love is what I need to help me know my name. I see that I've been blind. I need love. Love is what I need to help me know my name. Oh, give me love. Love's divine. Please forgive me now. I see that I've been blind. Give me love. Love is what I need. Love is what I need to help me. When I've walked to the end of my road, I've walked to the end of my road. Love, love, I need love. Love is what I need to help me know my name. And if you just love me, love will help me know my name.
Yes, love is what I need to know my name. These words from the artist's seal capture the meaning of our story today. The story of Jane and her discovery of her full self and her real name, Maudie. Jane's story captured my attention the first time I read it. Her words, I wasn't a real girl. I was a cardboard cutout of a girl. They stayed with me. It's clear the trauma and the pain of her home life. And this isn't unique or even uncommon for children, for any of us. So many of us know these experiences in our home lives, in our work lives, or in the stifling cultural conditions of oppression that seek to make us small, quiet, invisible. Conditions that seek to rob us of our fullness. But then something happens for Jane. Through the love of her grandmother, the generous embrace of the neighbors, and a little bit of imagination, Jane's full self, Maudie, finds expression. The freedom she experiences is in moments. Those moments when she's able to steal away from her house and go to her neighbors. But it is enough. These small moments of joy and love in the midst of the neglect and the suffering, they are life-saving. Zora Neale Hurston writes, love makes your soul crawl out from its hiding place. And that is exactly what Maudie's soul does. She is loved into the fullness of her being. I hear echoes of my own story in this story. And maybe you do too. For me, in a time of tremendous difficulty in my life, my UU church was the neighbor's house, full of warmth and welcome, music and imagination. And the grandmother, that was my Sunday school teachers, whose love and care, coupled with joy and attention, it made a difference in my life when I most needed it. That congregation, that community, those teachers, they helped me find my voice, my spirit, my soul. They loved me into being. I imagine that you too have stories like this. How Unitarian Universalism, its theology, its people, its ministry changed you, saved your life, helped your soul crawl out of its hiding space. How it helped grow the size of your soul. As process theologian Bernard Loomer so powerfully describes, by size, I mean the stature of a person's soul, the range and depth of your love, your capacity for relationships. I mean the volume of life you can take into your being and still maintain your integrity and individuality. There's so much expansiveness and generosity in Loomer's definition of the size of your soul. And he goes on. He says, I mean the strength of your spirit to encourage others to become freer in the development in their diversity and uniqueness. I mean the magnanimity of concern to provide conditions that enable others to increase in stature. You see, Loomer is not just talking about individual growth and liberation. And this matters to us as Unitarian Universalists because our faith has never been solely about individual spiritual growth. As Unitarian Universalists, we understand salvation not as individual but collective. We recognize the fundamental interconnectedness, interdependence of all life and of humanity. Foundational to the core theological idea of interdependence is that mutuality and responsibility are inherent to who we are as human beings. We are not islands. And our tradition calls us not to individual freedom or transformation alone, but to the liberation and thriving of all people. One of the most important and successful campaigns within Unitarian Universalism over this past year was UU the Vote, a national effort for Unitarian Universalists to partner with local grassroots organizing and voting rights groups on an unprecedented voter engagement, voter registration, and voter turnout effort. It was the first ever effort like this on our part as a larger association, and it was awesome. But here's something you may not know about UU the Vote. When I first shared the idea for UU the Vote at the 2019 General Assembly, I didn't know if it would take hold. I was simply throwing out a seed of a dream, imagining there before thousands of you, congregational delegates at GA, I asked, what if we as UUs helped engage and mobilize 1 million people to vote in the 2020 election? When I said that, it was scary. It seemed impossible. And in fact, the next time I talked about UU the Vote at a local congregation, I reduced the number to 500,000. But before we'd even started to create the team and the infrastructure, when we were still just talking about this idea, congregational leaders, ministers, religious educators, and members were clamoring to volunteer. Financial gifts began coming in, some unsolicited. Folks were ready to say yes, ready to give generously of their time and resources because they knew that our values of justice and compassion, that our system of democracy and the literal lives and well-being of our neighbors, of our loved ones, of each other were on the line and on the ballot. Thousands of people volunteered. Thousands of donors came forward from our congregations, many of you, and together we invested tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of hours and well over $1 million to vote love in the 2020 election. And in the end, we reached well over 3 million potential voters, far exceeding our wildest dreams. In what was the largest, most transparent and accessible election in our history, we UUs played a significant role. And we were likely the largest, most organized, faith-based pro-democracy effort during the election. Wow. Imagination, generosity, commitment, collective action. These fueled UU the Vote. But there was also some magic to it because it recognized our strengths and it invited us more fully into who we are. For we are the people who show up. We are the people who work together in community. We are people who believe in democracy, who understand our faith as active, who are concerned about the conditions of justice here and now, and who, when it comes right down to it, are a hopeful people. We are a hopeful people about what is possible and about our agency and capacity to meet the challenges of our time. Some of the magic of UU the Vote was that together we were loving each other into the fullness of who we are as Unitarian Universalists. But this isn't the end of the story. It is a reminder. It is a glimpse of what is possible when we say yes. When we say yes so generously and powerfully to what we believe in, to what we care about, to our ministries, our values, and when we choose solidarity, interdependence with wider networks of people working for justice, compassion, and liberation. From the beginning of my time as UUA president, I have said, this is no time for a casual faith, no time for a casual commitment to what you love most, and this is no time to go it alone. UU the Vote is just one example of what it looks like to take our faith, our values, and our commitment to interdependence seriously. It is life-saving, life-changing ministry, individually in our own lives, and revolutionary when we bring that powerful yes out into the world. And this yes is what is needed so deeply in our communities and our world right now. To love our society, to love our world into a new place of being. In her important book, Caste, Isabel Wilkerson explores the conditions of racism, white supremacy, and racial hierarchy as an American caste system. And in her book, she quotes Gary Michael Tartikoff, an American scholar of castes, who says of the United States, "This is a civilization searching for its humanity. It dehumanized others in order to build its civilization, and now it needs to find its own." There's power in those words and that history. So how do we find our humanity as a society, as a country, as a civilization? The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said the key was love. By love, King did not mean a sentimental or romantic kind of love, but rather an overflowing, audacious, and unconditional love that sought the fullest unfolding of every person. King said this love might well be the salvation of our civilization. The only way that we overcome the forces of racism, domination, discrimination, dehumanization, the forces that are at the foundation of the United States, those forces that have the effect of dehumanizing our society, the only way we overcome those forces is to turn to the deepest source of our humanity. And as Unitarian Universalists, we know that that foundation, that source of our humanity, is our compassion and our interdependence, our mutuality and relationship and responsibility to each other. In other words, I would take Bernard Loomer's words and King's words and say we need to grow the size of our love. And by size, as Loomer says, I mean the range and depth of your love. your capacity for relationships. I mean the volume of life you can take into your being. I mean the strength of your spirit to encourage others to become freer, to provide conditions that enable others to increase their stature, the size of their love and their soul. And this is where the real spiritual depth and calling of our faith lives. Not just as an intellectual exercise, but as embodiment. Embodying and growing our capacity for this powerful form of love that encourages all of us to live into the fullness of our being and that is committed to the conditions that make this fullness possible for everyone. Compassion, interdependence. Looking back, the love of her grandmother, that trip to the church rummage sale, and the generous, inclusive embrace of her neighbors made a powerful difference to young Jane, to Maudie. Looking back, the warmth and magic of my UU church and the love and care of my Sunday school and youth leaders shaped my life and my calling in ways that I will always be grateful for and will never be able to repay. Looking back, UU the Vote became this incredible source of community, joy, and positive action in the midst of what was one of the most traumatic times in our lives. It drew us together in unprecedented ways and was a lifeline. And this is not the end of the story. It's just a glimpse, just a few stories to capture some of what is possible in all of our congregations when we say yes. When we say yes boldly, audaciously, powerfully to our values, to our spirits and our love, and to one another. These stories and more are happening all across our congregations. None of us will ever know all the difference that our generosity to our congregations has made to the lives of our children, our families, our elders, to the lives and conditions of our larger communities. We'll never know all the ways that we have helped make a difference. When we give boldly, generously, audaciously of our financial resources as we are able, we make our values and our ministry manifest in the world. When we give generously of our hearts and our care and our love to our children and families, elders and adults, young adults and youth, we change lives. We save lives. And when we dream big, as leaders and staff about the impact we are called to make in the wider world, lives are changed. The material conditions of our communities can change. We are changed. We make it possible. Loved into fullness, loved into being. May we keep saying yes, boldly, courageously, and lovingly to our values and our faith. May it be so.
There are sacred moments, sparkling moments, when we answer the call to live out our values, and in so doing, bless the world beyond our imaginings. These powerful, sparkling moments are times when we are truly alive, when we feel and know and demonstrate our values because of the principles that have claimed us, because of this faith that we share, because we have been loved into being. It is time for the offering. This is a chance to give of your tangible energy to benefit the congregation which has nurtured and grown you, so that in turn it can be a powerful presence for future generations. This is an opportunity to make manifest generosity. This is an invitation to align resources and highest values. Susan Frederick Gray said, "The most important thing you can do for Unitarian Universalism is to generously support your congregation. It's transforming lives." Let us give now because our congregation is transforming lives and communities for the better. Let us give because we have been loved into being and because we want this same gift to be available to others. Let us give because we want generosity to be our response to the world. The offering will both be given and received with abundant gratitude.
You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can find the fighter, but I see it in you, so we go walk it out. And move mountains, gonna walk it out. Move mountains.
And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid.
I'll rise
Dear friends across time and space, as worship comes to a close, may we remember the strength and the beauty that can be found in our faith.
May we feel the power generated by the giving and receiving of gratitude and generosity in our lives.
May we feel ourselves held in the embrace of the covenant that we share and in the tender care of the larger community that has loved us into being.
Through it all, we are held by a love that will never let us go.
May we grow, may we expand, may we flourish, may it be so.
Dear ones, know that we have been held in love, even as we struggle with the holy work that is ours to do.
May we carry a song of love on our hearts as we embark on the work that lies ahead.
May we go out into our lives and into our days with peace, and may we give back love.
It's not the waking or the rising. It's the grounding of the foot uncompromising. It's not forgoing of the light. It's not the opening of the eyes. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It's not the shade we should be casting. It's the light and it's the obstacle that casts it. It's the heart that drives the light. It's the fire it ignites. It's not the waking, it's the rising. It's not the song, but it's the singing. It's the heaven of the human spirit ringing. It is the bringing of the light. It is the bearing of the rhyme. It's not the waking, it's the rising. And I could cry power, 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 Lord. Nina cried power, Billy cried power, Mavis cried power. And I could cry power, power, oh power, Lord. Curtis cried power, Patty cried power, Lena cried power. It's not the war, but what's behind it. Lord, the fear of our men is a mere assignment, and everything that we're denied by keeping the divide. It's not the waking, it's the rising. And I just cry power, oh power, Lennon cried power, James Brown cried power, Nina cried power, and I could cry power, power, send power. mind. Give me love. Love is what I need. Love is what I need to help me. When I've walked to the end of my road, I've walked to the end of my road. Love, love, I need love. Love is what I need to help me know my name. And if you just love me, love will help me know my name.